This podcast is brought to you by Infrastructure Masons, uniting builders for the digital future.
One, two, three, four.
Looking to turn your innovative idea into the next big thing in digital infrastructure? The iMasons Incubator is here to help you connect with industry leaders, spark awareness, and accelerate your path to success. If your concept can help drive a more sustainable digital future, we want to hear from you. Don't miss this chance to grow, give back, and shape the digital landscape. Email us today at innovation@imasons.org to find out how the iMasons Incubator can help bring your idea to the world.
My name is Romain Tranchant, and today I'm joined by Venessa Moffat, Executive Board Member at the Data Center Alliance. Venessa has been in the sector for over 20 years with roles spanning from IT to facilities management and marketing. Today, Venessa is bringing together her experience in both the IT and facilities management world together by talking about the use of AI agents to support both the data center operations and operators. Let's get right into it. Hi, Venessa. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very good. We have a very special topic today. We're trying to cross over both the IT and facilities world, which both of us have been talking for a while, and we know this is quite a passionate topic. Before we get into the topic of today, can you give a presentation of yourself?
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, I've been in the sector for about 20 years. Like quite a lot of people our age, I kind of fell into it from IT, but obviously loved it the second I arrived. So I've done a number of different roles. I've worked for a few operators. I've moved physical data centers, worked overnight, eaten lots of pizza, but also then worked on the sales and marketing side as well. So I feel like I understand data centers from a fairly holistic point of view. And one of my fascinations has really been how the software works with such physical infrastructure, which is always a finite thing. But, you know, we've talked about elastic cloud and software-defined data centers. But at the end of the day, it's still a building. So that juxtaposition, if you like, is really fascinating.
That's brilliant. But there is a very specific aspect that is becoming more and more prevalent, and this is the use of AI agents. Can you give us an introduction to the topic for the people who are not as aware of what agents are and what the capabilities of those agents are either?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll just go back a little bit first, just on the whole history of DSIM. What it tried to do was bring together all of the various different layers so that you've got visibility of what's going on in your data center. You could report, it would give you information so you could actually go and make some different decisions and manage your data center in an effective way. It kind of failed in so many ways. I mean, Andrew Waterston, I think back in 2017, called it a dead camel in motion because it got stuck at the bottom of the Gartner hype cycle for about 10 years, I think it was ages. And then they binned the hype cycle as well for Gartner, the quadrant for DSIM. So it's really had a struggle to survive. And I think the reason it struggled to survive is because our sector was quite immature. The technology was quite immature. We didn't have a definition of DSIM across the board that all the vendors agreed with. And now we've got software that's doing something that's a little bit cleverer. And I think that's really why I'm finding agents really fascinating. In our sector, we don't like the word agent. Whether it's an agent on the server, whether it's an agent on some infrastructure, sending data outside of the site, we generally don't really like that because we're quite risk averse. But I think what people don't realize is we've got agents running already. You know, if you've got some, let's say, cooling equipment, there could be some closed loop control software already controlling that in a data center that you're already hosting in. It's already out there. I guess we don't really call them agents, but that's what they are.
So what you're basically defining as an agent is a standalone piece of software that does one task, that will literally just have one goal, one task, and will do that really well, repetitively and dependably. Is that a right way to summarize it?
Yeah, it's narrow AI. So it's not this generative AI stuff. It's a narrow AI application. It's got one job and it learns on the job, but it doesn't necessarily have to go off site or anything. And actually having a smaller language model is probably better for those specific tasks because it learns I use the analogy of the cooling unit. It learns that specific unit and it learns and manages to operate over time better and alert better over time as well. So yeah, it's a closed loop control system on site, small language model, and it's narrow AI.
So what's interesting is that when we used to have agents, they were probably pre-programmed, extremely inflexible. And what we're seeing is that with the advent of AI technologies, because AI being the tool that it is, just replaces what was there before, brings a bit more flexibility, maybe a bit more evolutions and power behind what those agents can do. Is that what you see happening?
Yeah, I think cooling's a good example because eventually, when we see all of these massive AI implementations really taking hold, and we'll see the workloads ramp up and ramp down really quickly, humans at that point won't be able to keep up with managing the cooling systems around that. So we'll have to have something that's computer controlled rather than human controlled. And I know that a lot of people don't like this just yet, but when you see these environments where it's just going to be ramping up 1 second and down the next, you've got minutes to respond to that to make sure that you've adjusted the environmental controls. Otherwise, things get too hot and things go very badly wrong. So yeah, I think these things are coming.
So based on your knowledge of implementation of DSIM, we've seen a number of operators and users actually using the technology to better make decisions and controls over how they plan, forecast, and optimize their entire stack, actually, whether it was the data centers of the IT servers and beyond. But let's go back to one thing. There is still a number of limitations that those DCIM platforms are facing. Can you take us through this? Because I think that's going to be a great way of then understanding what the potential that AI agents will unlock.
Yeah, so I think DSIM has tried to be all things to all men, and I think that's partly where it's really struggled because every data center is different and its requirements of the tools around it to operate it are different. And so this is a very difficult area to say, right, this is DSIM for everybody, because it's not going to work like that. I think other ways that it's struggled is the implementation of it and actually rolling it out to all of those various different parts and delivering on the promises of value that it had right at the beginning. So some implementations that you see haven't actually even reached the IT stack yet. They're kind of doing the EPMS part of it, and maybe that's enough for some sites, but maybe it's not enough for a co-location site who needs to have all of the rack layout so that when they do their remote hand support, they know where the servers are. So it's trying to do everything. It's trying to get live data, but it also involves a lot of processes, and that has been difficult as well for people to get their heads around. When you bring in a software tool, your internal processes and your software have to work hand in hand. If those two things don't work, then you're not going to be able to use your software, and then you won't get the value out of the expenditure. So I think there are a number of things.
So what we typically see if we go back to the core of what DCIM is, we collect a bunch of data that replicates what is out there in the field, and then we try and make a lot of decisions and automations based on this. But the primary thing that tends to happen is that the data collected is always out of sync with whatever's happening on the site, therefore created all sorts of issues with how to best utilize and what sort of decision we can make out of it.
Yeah, it was trying to be a digital twin before its time, basically. So we didn't have the live data feeds that we've got now. So actually some of them are a lot better now because they've got live data rather than, somebody actually entering it into a system. So it has improved. But when it first came out, it was literally a few years ahead of its time. It was quite visionary, I guess.
One of the things that we've seen in the past as well is that once you bought your DCIM, you were sort of locked with buying the modules of the same platform all the time. So you had that lock-in effect. once you've chosen one. And if the other modules were not as good as what another vendor would do, that would be very difficult to then start having ways of integrating all of this, or the cost will ramp up and so on. So I would guess that what we're trying to do is to really start generating that platform that is both flexible, integratable, and can really grow as the need arises. Is that where AI or agents based on AI is coming in?
Yeah, no, I think that's probably why we're coming to this shift. I mean, it's very natural for a software company to want to do everything, and trying to say, right, I want to control all of this, and if you have all of this on one platform, you can do all of this. It's a natural way for a software company to grow. So I do understand why that's happened. But as I said before, every data center has different requirements. So I think the way it's moving to is that actually for this system over here, for this company over here, you need a specific tool that's really good at it. And if you want to automate it, then go and automate that little bit, and you can learn to trust that little piece of software over there, because that's what it does for a living. That's the only thing it does. And then you eventually, once you trust various different pieces, then you've got a suite of tools that are optimizing your data center. And it's not just monitoring. You don't necessarily need to have people keying in data every single day. It already knows where everything is, and it knows what's happening. It's got some alerting coming in. And I think, that's the real way to optimize data centers. So I think if you're, I don't know, looking to the future a little bit, maybe we can have these agents talking to each other at some point.
So before we go into agents working in groups, almost forming their own network of things, let's go back to defining what an AI agent is. Can you maybe compare to what was there before, or compared to what people might know? Like, I mean, we always talk about AI as large language models. As one example is ChatGPT or the equivalents. But what's an AI agent like? What can we see? How can we operate with it? Do we even know it exists, or is it just buried somewhere and just doing its own work?
I think the answer is all of the above, depending on how you bring it to market. I've seen some agents that have a lovely dashboard, and that's amazing. I've seen other agents that work in the background, and they just spit out data to other dashboards or pieces of software. So I think it's essentially, AI is a massive term. It's too broad really for this. I really think. But an agent is something that it's a narrow AI implementation, and it has one purpose, and it goes around that purpose and learns on it in a smaller scale.
So what's been quite interesting is that because we can be a lot more flexible in the way data is being handled, the outputs are being produced, we're almost challenging the need for that very standardized, very monolithic kind of database that contains all of the information that you need. And this is an idea that you floated to me before. Being one of the biggest challenges, you've got that monolithic database that is representing the real world in a way with all the biases that we know. And suddenly, if we start thinking in terms of micro agents or micro programs, if we want to call it that way, we sort of no longer need that view, that holistic view. We just need agents that take care of one very specific thing in their own specific way. Is that what it's going to do?
It's a big jump, isn't it? I can see that it's a big jump. I used to work for a business integration company, and we had ETL, extract, transform, and load, or suck, chew, and spit, as somebody told me once. But for that, you needed a data warehouse. So you take all of the data into one place, and then you can do whatever you need to do, and then put it out onto a dashboard or reports or whatever you need. Hence the ETL. Then we have data lakes, where you have certain pockets of data, and people can, applications can go out and search those pockets of data, and they might be in various different locations, might be on the internet. But now I think actually a step forward from that would be that actually leave the data where it is. We know where it is. Get an agent to go and get it every 5 minutes, and that's one option. Or if something happens, an agent will see that and it will go and do something else. So yeah, it is a big leap. I understand that.
It's still quite interesting in the way that this is not just limited to the data that we can get. We've got, video processing can become an AI agent to extract information. We've got being able to validate both on your facility side, your IT side, all of that information. But what's more interesting than that is that we can have agents that really do not get first-hand information like it used to be the case with any functions in any software that would always go back to that one source of truth, but literally start questioning other AI agents around and say, all right, all the ones that are looking after a chiller, give me your status, give me what you see, and then we'll be able to, I'll then be able to make a decisions and then forward that on to another agent that makes other kind of decisions. And that's really where we're going, is that it's not just small agents dispersed, it's a group of agents with each of them their single functions, talking to each other, interrogating each other, and figuring things out as they go.
Yeah, I think this is the new anti-integration. It's unbundling. I think, if you've got an agent managing the cooling system over here, you've got another one in security over here, and let's say you've got another one looking after filters, for example, because filter efficiency is quite important for saving energy. And these agents they've all got that data. They're aware of their environments. And so you could have potentially another supervisor agent that says, right, give me all of your energy consumption from this date to this date, bring it back in this format, and present it like this. And we do have lots of agents on the internet now that will take a spreadsheet, for example, and draw a picture. And so all of these agents are happening. And I do think that, we should be getting them to talk to each other and be able to make sense of that data in such a way that it makes the human part of operating data centers a lot easier.
So interesting that you bring humans into this. We still need people to go swap hard drives, push buttons, rack and stack, go and control things, make sure everything's fine and fix it. How do we see those agents then playing in relations to people? And is that even a source of our ability to I wouldn't say replace, because we're already at a deficit of about 300,000 people on the market, but extend the capabilities of very talented individuals that already work in the data center market to extend their maybe their scope and their capabilities and make them more efficient?
I think it will absolutely make us all a lot more productive. I think it already is, actually. If you take the non-data center part of it, that's already making us more productive as humans. But just within the data center, yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned the supervisor agent, and I think that the workflows that supervisor agent controls are completely human programs, completely human organized. And there's a lot of potential risk in this. So what we're talking about here is definitely the future. I don't know how long it will take, but there's a lot of risk to manage until we get there. So the workflow will be really important from the supervisor level. The alerting will be really important. That is a human controlled thing. And I think you mentioned deterministic before as well. So not all of these will be automated. Not all of these will be closed loop. There'll be some deterministic things. Give you an example. So security, for example, if this happens, that's a trigger. That's come to the agent. The agent will say, is that a problem? Yes, no, it's going to learn from it anyway. But as well, you can have a deterministic instruction on that agent to say, right, every 5 minutes, go and check this, go and check that, go and check that. And so you can have automated and deterministic functions within all of these.
Sorry, Vanessa, there has been a little blip in the network. Can you start again from talking about security, please?
Yeah, sure. So if I give you the example of security, you can have systems that are both autonomous and deterministic. So if from the autonomous point of view, you can have triggers that come to the agent and they'll react and learn and respond to that. Or you can tell the agent to every 5 minutes go and check this or that, and it will go and act dependent on what it finds. So you can have two kinds of actions from those agents, and that will make people more productive. Absolutely.
It's one of the things that we can take for granted in this industry is that people will be risk averse. So we're talking about a massive shift at the moment to be able to rely, and you use one word that for me is quite key, is basically non-deterministic models. We've tried ChatGPT, you ask it the same questions literally back to back, and the answer is, you can feel it's the same, but it's not exactly the same. How do we bridge the gap between having AI agents that are non-deterministic in a world where everything relies on risk, on security, on the fact that we try to predict every single outcome possible?
I think that goes back to the kind of training models and language models that we're using. So OpenAI obviously uses LLMs. What I think we're going to move to in the data center sector is more small language models, but also there's a federated learning model that I've seen as well. And that will learn from multi-site implementations, but that will be multi-site within one company, and that will be across their own network. But then you've got the learning across their own infrastructure and not from outside. So I think that will limit the risk and actually make it more relevant and make the decisions better as well.
So we've used the word DCIM for a while, although the definitions has always been very, very loose. Is there a new brand of software coming out? Are we still calling it DCIM? Do we need to create a new category of software so people realize what they're looking at compared to what was before?
Okay, so in my mind, I think DCIM needs to stay on the monitoring level. It's tried to start doing management, but I think it should stay as a monitoring tool, because that then becomes almost a database, a live database that an agent can kind of interrogate. So that then gives it a place, and it doesn't really matter what that DCIM looks like, because you've got a whole suite of monitoring tools. You've got, and management tools as well. But those all then become live databases and live connections that you can hook into, and the AI agents can optimize around that. So I think, yeah, a new category of tool, maybe DC optimization tools, maybe.
So we've been looking at the tool aspects of things, DCIM, and all the software platforms that enables us to manage data centers. And as you've been saying, there is potentially a big shift ahead of us that will be coming up, and we see a lot of companies talking about it now. How true and realistic that is different, but I'd love to move away from the tool to the outcomes. What are the outcomes that we'll see become reality, provided that all of that is starting to flourish and get implemented everywhere? What are the outcomes that are unreachable today that suddenly become actually possible?
I think it's around measuring the optimization of the entire stack within a data center. Up until now, DCIM has given you monitoring, tiniest bit of management, a little bit of intelligence around that as well. But I think this will give us proper optimization across the board. As I was mentioning before, right from filter usage and replacement, sweating assets, whether they're IT or, in the gray space, or doing all of that and forensically optimizing the entire data center.
Do we see a place where, and we've been purely talking about operations, where actually those agents apply also maybe before and after the data center is being built and utilized?
So I'm thinking in design.
Yeah. So do we think that the same principles are going to apply in terms of this is what we're trying to run, design a data center for me, go and figure out what we need to do to be able to implement a data center in a given country, in a given place, with the specific requirements. Is that where we're going to, in terms of agents and the ability of agents to actually specialize in certain components, in choosing, designing, integrating, operating? Is that, do we see that extending far before the data center is already built and operating?
Yeah, I mean, there's already at least one tool that I know of that can do pretty much that. But we're also seeing in commissioning, the scenario testing used to be fairly basic, but now, because we don't really know what we're going to use all of the data center for, we're building it, but we're thinking, right, well, we might use that room for that, we might use it for something else. So the scenario testing has to be much more granular, and we're using AI agents. We're using software, let's say more complex software for that. I haven't seen too many other examples, though, I have to say, not in the design front.
That's going to be interesting to follow through, I guess, as things are developing. Let's talk about implementation, because all of this is very good, but we've seen so many projects fail at the first hurdle with very simple questions. How's it going to work? How, what's the release methods? How you're going to implement it? What's it going to cost? What are the barriers to adoptions that you see, and how do you think people will break through them and actually make that technology a reality on data center sites?
I think there are two main things, or two main themes, really, that I see, and they come up time and time again. One of them is security, and people don't like the data going off site. So cloud applications, sometimes it's just a no. There's no kind of analysis of what data's going off, or how secure that is. It's just like a company policy. We're not using cloud applications. And some sites are actually air gapped as well. So, sometimes it's just not a possibility. But security is definitely one area. The other one is actually risk tolerance and trust. And I think that is another reason why we see a lot of implementations on-prem rather than going to the cloud, and not liking the autonomous nature. So there's one application I've seen where it doesn't actually go, right, we're turning everything on right now. It says, right, these are the functions and the alerts and everything, and it breaks it down really in a really granular fashion. And once you're happy with that the machine is making all of the right decisions, then you take the human out of the loop for that tiny little piece, and you keep doing that until you've fully made the whole thing autonomous. And I think that's a lovely way of building trust between human and AI agent. But yeah, it's those two areas for me.
It's really going to be about knowing that in times of uncertainty, especially when those agents are facing new things they haven't seen before, and we see weather patterns getting out of usual. We can see equipment failing and creating new conditions and so on. We want to make sure those agents can still reply and react in the most appropriate manner. What about? So do you think that all of that is going to be applied to more the brand new estates that are being built? And we know we've got a pipeline for years to come of brand new data centers being built. Or is that going to also be applicable to legacy estates where there is probably more variations and more things to handle, but where those estates actually require more of the optimizations from an energy perspective?
I think actually this is a brilliant application for AI agents. The condition-based monitoring thing is spot on for all of those changing environments, for sweating assets, for making sure that you're replacing things at the right time, servicing things at the right time. It can give you early warnings, predictive analytics for things that may be going wrong. So predictive maintenance, condition-based monitoring for varying conditions and everything that's changing right now. It's spot on usage for AI agents.
Do you see that? So as those agents are going to be built, I mean, we're talking very about very tight integrations with assets in general. So if I take anything on the cooling chain, who's the best place to actually build those AI agents we can trust? Are we going back to manufacturers because they know their kit's the best? We're going to software providers because those people have got the skills to actually build the software? Are we going to generalists because they're going to know how to integrate that with everything else? Who's going to be the best place to actually come up with the agents that actually have a chance of actually taking over as a standard pieces of software?
Okay, well, this very good question, but there's two answers to this. Firstly, the market right now is really fragmented. There are some vendors who've got their own software. There's a couple of generalists that have got certain applications but don't span the whole lot. Then you've got other organizations that are coming in from the outside and they just do asset management, the predictive maintenance and condition-based monitoring, but they do assets across the board. They don't necessarily know data centers very well, but they know assets and how to manage that data. But the second part of this is we don't have any data standards in our sector. If you look at aviation, for example, that's way ahead of us. If you look at pharma, they've got their own association for data standards, and we just don't have that. Construction is going through it right now. They realized a few years back they don't have the right data standards. They're not very good at sharing data. But when they did, it was in totally different formats. We've got a bit of a journey ahead of us.
Yeah, that's going to be both interesting and exciting, I think, to see where those things are going. Just as a closing thoughts, if you had one recommendations for anybody that's listening to us today, what would it be? What was your key point and key message?
I think it would be not to kind of shudder when you hear the word agent, because it isn't necessarily, as bad as you think it might be, and it isn't as insecure as you think it might be. It might actually help you do your job better. It might actually save you some time. So I would just say they're also already here. They're here, and give them a chance.
That's fantastic, Venessa. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts today and going through what is a brand new topic where it's nice to hear people paying attention to it, becoming authorities on it. I invite anybody on our listeners to actually reach out to Venessa directly if they want to continue that discussion. We will post and continue the discussion for sure on the iMasons platform, iMasons.mobilize.io. If you want to reach out, that's the best way to do, to either one of the members of the innovation committee. And if you're listening to this from outside iMasons and you wonder what we do and the sort of events that we put together, please go to imasons.org to actually find out all of the details, where you will find also a form to become a member. Vanessa, again, thank you very much for the time today and all the insights. I really appreciate coming and sharing your thoughts on the topic. And I'm pretty sure we'll have you again soon on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Take care.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Infrastructure Masons is a global, non-profit, professional association of individuals connected and empowered to build a greater digital future for all. If you too want access to networking events, forums, and summits that foster innovation and influence, register now and join the other 6,000 committed participants at imasons.org/membership application.